The millionaire trapped in his own lies until love gave him a second chance. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, it is free, and it is the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support truly means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. Ethan Hale had everything a man in his 30s could want. Wealth, reputation, a penthouse overlooking the Manhattan skyline, and the power to make entire markets move with a single decision. Yet on a cold Monday morning in New York City, he discovered that none of those things could protect him from his own family, especially not from the ironclad inheritance clause his late mother had left behind. The rule was painfully simple. If Ethan did not get married before turning 35, he would lose controlling ownership of Hale International Holdings, the company his mother had spent her entire life protecting. And the one who would take his place was the last person Ethan trusted, his uncle, Richard Hale, a man who smiled like a polished politician but hid shadows in every corner of his eyes. Ethan had 31 days left. The board members were already circling like vultures, waiting for him to fail. Rumors spread through Wall Street that Hale International was about to face a major shift in leadership. Journalists camped near the company entrance, hungry for a headline that would shake the city, and Richard Hale, with his immaculate suit and colder-than-steel smirk, pretended to be supportive while secretly preparing to take everything Ethan had ever known. Ethan needed a wife. Not love, not romance, just a name on a legal document. That was when Elena Brooks walked into his life. She was a financial attorney he had hired months earlier to review a complex overseas audit. She was quiet, observant, and carried herself with an elegance that did not demand attention but naturally drew it. She wore simple clothes, low heels, and always smelled faintly of fresh sunlight. Her colleagues joked that she was soft like a sunflower, but Ethan noticed something else. Whenever she was nervous, she would touch the small sunflower pendant on her necklace. Almost as if it was a piece of her past she refused to let go. One evening, after a disastrous meeting with the board, Ethan found Elena in the small garden outside the firm's building. She was kneeling beside a row of tiny sunflower sprouts, gently brushing soil around their fragile stems. The cold wind blew through the city, but Elena kept covering the seedlings with her hands, trying to shield them. Ethan asked, "Why sunflowers?" Elena looked up, her voice soft but steady. "Because they always find the sun, even when the sky is dark. They remind me that hope can grow anywhere, even in the wrong season." Her words struck him more deeply than he expected. Maybe that was why, when the pressure became unbearable and his options ran out, Ethan did the unthinkable. He made Elena an offer. A professional marriage, a signed contract, 6 months. No emotions, no expectations, and a payment that would change her life. Elena froze when she heard it. Her eyes widened, searching Ethan's face for a hint of mockery. But he was not joking. He was desperate. She had every reason to walk away. She had a quiet life, a steady income, and a reputation built through hard work. But she also had a younger brother who needed expensive medical treatment that insurance would not cover, and time was not on their side. Elena asked for 24 hours. And the next morning, with trembling hands and eyes that held a mixture of fear and determination, she returned to Ethan's office. "I will do it," she said softly, "but I need one condition." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Name it." "New questions about my past." She did not blink. She did not flinch. And something in her tone told Ethan that her past was not just painful, it was dangerous. Ethan agreed. They signed the marriage contract that afternoon. His lawyers celebrated. The board panicked. Richard Hale tightened his jaw in silent rage. But as Ethan watched Elena trace her finger over her sunflower pendant after signing the papers, he felt a strange, sharp ache run through his chest. He had just married a woman he knew almost nothing about. A woman who looked fragile, but carried storms behind her calm eyes. A woman who stepped into his life like sunlight through a window he never realized was closed. And deep down, Ethan sensed one truth he refused to admit. This contract was going to cost him far more than money. It was going to cost him the truth. For the first few days after the contract wedding, Ethan Hale tried to convince himself that everything was under control. The media believed the marriage was real. The board reluctantly accepted it. Richard Hale kept his distance, though Ethan could feel the pressure building behind his uncle's eyes like a storm waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Elena Brooks, however, was the only unpredictable part of the arrangement. She moved into Ethan's penthouse with a quiet grace, almost as if she was trying not to disturb the air around her. She unpacked only 2 small suitcases and placed a tiny pot of sunflower sprouts on the balcony where the morning light reached first. She never asked for more space, more comfort, or more privileges. She worked long hours at the firm, came home late, and retreated to the guest room without a word. Ethan knew this was a transaction, but something about her distance felt heavier than professionalism. It felt like fear. One Thursday morning, his assistant rushed into his office holding a sealed brown folder. "Sir, you need to see this immediately." Inside the folder was a set of internal audit documents that belonged to Hale International Holdings. These were documents tied to a 20-year-old investigation, a period that aligned with the months before his mother's death. They were protected, classified, and stored in the deepest restrictive vault within the headquarters. Someone had accessed them. Someone had tampered with them. Someone had left fingerprints on them. Ethan felt an uncomfortable chill crawl down his spine. Who opened the vault? His assistant swallowed. Security flagged only one set of fingerprints. They were confirmed through secondary analysis this morning. Ethan looked at the printed sheet. It said, Elena Brooks. For a moment, everything inside him went still. He read the name again, hoping the letters would rearrange themselves into something else. But they did not. It was Elena, his contract wife. The woman who asked him not to question her past. The woman who touched her sunflower pendant whenever she felt pressure. A woman who seemed harmless on the surface, but now stood at the center of something he could not explain. He called her immediately. "Elena, I need you to come to the office." Her voice on the phone was calm. Too calm. "I am in a meeting right now. I can come by this evening." "No," Ethan said. "I need you here now. M." There was a pause, soft but telling. Then she whispered, "All right, I will come." An hour later, she walked into his office, her shoulders slightly tense, her hair damp from the cold New York rain. She looked at the documents on his desk, then at him. "You think I took these?" Elena asked quietly. "Your fingerprints are on them," Ethan replied, keeping his voice steady even though something inside him was tightening. "Do you want to explain how that is possible?" Elena's hand drifted to her sunflower pendant, her fingers gripping it with a desperate sort of gentleness. "I cannot explain it." Ethan stood up, frustration rising in his chest. "You cannot? These documents were sealed. They were protected. No one gets access unless they are trying to expose something." "Elena," he said more softly, "I married you because I needed help, not because I wanted more lies in my life." As her eyes glistened, but she did not cry. She looked at him with a mixture of sorrow and resignation. "I did not open that vault, and I did not take anything from your company. Then why are your fingerprints on them?" Elena hesitated for the briefest moment. "Because someone wants you to doubt me." The answer hit Ethan harder than he expected. He searched her face, trying to read the truth beneath the layers she kept hidden. She looked fragile, but there was something stilly beneath her fear. Something that told him she was holding back more than one secret. Before Ethan could say anything else, the office door swung open. Richard Hale walked in with a polished smile and icy confidence. "Well, well," Richard said, glancing at Elena with calculated disdain. "It seems your little contract bride has been very busy." Elena lowered her gaze, her fingers still wrapped tightly around the sunflower pendant. Ethan felt the tension in the room thicken. In that moment, he realized something unsettling. This was not an accident. This was not a coincidence. This was the first move in a much larger game, and someone wanted Ethan to believe that the woman he had just married was his greatest threat. Ethan Hale dismissed his uncle with a cold stare, refusing to give Richard the satisfaction of watching him fall apart. After several tense minutes, Richard finally left, his polished shoes echoing down the marble hallway like a taunt. The moment the door closed, silence filled the office, heavy and suffocating. Elena Brooks remained standing near the window, her hand wrapped so tightly around her sunflower pendant that her knuckles had turned white. Rain streaked down the glass behind her, turning the Manhattan skyline into a blurred watercolor of gray and silver. She looked small against the storm outside, yet something in her posture suggested she was bracing herself for impact. Ethan took a long breath. "Elena, if someone is framing you, I need to know who. I cannot protect you if you keep me in the dark. Elena's voice was barely above a whisper. You cannot protect me. Not from this. Before Ethan could respond, his office door opened again. This time, the footsteps were slower, heavier, carrying a familiarity that made Ethan straighten instinctively. It was his father, Alexander Hale. The retired chairman walked in with the authority of a man who had led billion-dollar negotiations and congressional hearings. But when his eyes landed on Elena, all that authority drained from his face. He froze. His complexion turned ashen, and in a voice Ethan had never heard from him before, shaken raw, Alexander whispered, Why is she here? Ethan frowned. Father, this is Elena, my wife. What is going on? Elena lowered her gaze, avoiding Alexander's shocked stare. Her fingers trembled slightly as they touched the sunflower pendant, an unconscious habit whenever she was afraid. Alexander took a step back, visibly rattled. You brought her into this house? Into this company? Ethan, do you have any idea what you have done? Ethan moved between them, protective without even realizing it. What does that mean? You know her? Alexander swallowed hard, gripping the back of a chair to steady himself. I remember her from 20 years ago. She was just a little girl then. Her father worked with your mother on the internal investigation. They came to our home several times. Your mother, she was very fond of this child. Oju. Elena kept her eyes on the floor. Ethan felt something shift inside him. If you knew her, why did you never say anything? Because, Alexander said, I never thought I would see her again. Not after the fire, not after everything that happened. Ethan, her family vanished the night your mother died. The room fell silent. Outside, thunder rolled across the sky like a warning. Ethan felt a cold wave rush over him. Vanished? What do you mean vanished? Alexander pressed a hand to his forehead. Her father was the last person to speak with your mother before the fire. He came to deliver documents for the case. He and his family disappeared the same night. No forwarding address. No messages. Nothing. It was as if they were erased. Elena flinched, turning slightly away from them. Ethan stepped closer, his voice soft but firm. Elena, where did you go after the fire? Elena's lips parted, but no words came. She looked toward the rain-soaked skyline, her expression filled with memories she had tried to bury for decades. Alexander continued, his tone heavy with regret. Ethan, listen to me. This girl was connected to the case your mother died trying to expose. The same case those documents belong to. The same case Richard has been trying to bury for 20 years. A sharp pain tightened Ethan's chest. Everything suddenly connected: the fingerprints, the silence, Elena's fear, and the sunflower pendant she clutched like a lifeline. But before he could ask more, Elena finally spoke. Her voice trembled, but her eyes, when she lifted them, were steady. My family did not vanish, she said. We ran, because someone came after us. Someone who wanted your mother's evidence destroyed. Someone who wanted me gone. Ethan felt his breath catch. Elena, are you saying someone tried to... Yes, she said, interrupting softly. Someone tried to kill me that night. Alexander staggered back. Ethan felt the ground tilt beneath him. And Elena, standing in the soft reflection of the storm, looked like a sunflower fighting to stay upright in a hurricane. She continued, That is why I told you not to ask about my past. It is also why someone wants you to doubt me now. Because the moment you trust me, the truth your mother died for will rise again. Ethan looked at her, torn between anger, fear, and an overwhelming urge to protect her. Elena, he said slowly, whatever this is, whatever danger you carry, I am already in it with you. Her eyes glistened, but she shook her head. No, Ethan, you are in far deeper danger than you think. The storm outside cracked open with lightning, and the truth inside the room felt even louder. For the rest of the day, Ethan Hale could not concentrate on a single document placed in front of him. His father's shaken expression, Elena's trembling voice, and the sudden revelation of her past kept looping through his thoughts like a film he could not stop replaying. He had married her for convenience, yet now she was tied to the very tragedy that had shaped his entire life. That night, the city felt colder than usual. The rain had stopped, but the streets were still wet, glistening under the pale glow of streetlights. Ethan drove to the Hale family estate, a place he rarely visited anymore because every hallway, every picture frame, and every shadow carried echoes of his mother. He walked into her old room with a heaviness in his chest that he had tried to ignore for years. The air still smelled faintly of lavender, the way it always had when she was alive. He stood there for a long moment, letting the quiet wrap around him. Something inside him whispered that the answers were here. Ethan began going through the old furniture, drawers, and cabinets. The housekeepers had cleaned years earlier, but they had never touched his mother's belongings. Near the corner of the room, behind an aging painting of the Hale family crest, Ethan found a wooden storage box. It was locked. He hesitated, then forced the lock open. Inside the box were several items wrapped in thin fabric: a fountain pen, a silver bracelet, a stack of handwritten notes, and a sealed envelope with his name on it. His breath caught. The handwriting was unmistakable. It belonged to his mother. His hand shook as he unfolded the letter. The ink was faded, suggesting it had been written months before the fire. "Ethan, my sweet boy," the letter began, "if you are reading this, then something dangerous has happened. There are people who want to destroy everything your father and I built for you. They will do anything to hide the truth. I fear that I will not be able to protect you from them much longer." A chill ran down Ethan's spine. The letter continued, "There is a child who sometimes visits with her father. She is kind, gentle, and far too aware of things she should not know. She reminds me of a sunflower that grows even when the soil is harsh. Protect her, Ethan, because the people who want to harm this family would harm her too." Ethan felt the room tilt. His mother had known Elena. She had cared about her. She had written about her months before the fire. He kept reading, unable to look away. "And if anything happens to me, follow the truth, no matter how painful it is. Do not let fear lead you, and do not trust Richard blindly. He stands in the shadows of all of this." The final line felt like a knife to his chest. "Take care of the girl. She is braver than she knows, and she may one day save your life." Ethan lowered the letter, his heart pounding violently in his chest. Everything suddenly connected. The ashes of the past, the fingerprints, Elena's fear, her sunflower pendant, her family's disappearance. She was the girl in the fire, the one who saved him when he was 12 years old, the one who had been running from danger ever since. A floorboard creaked behind him. Ethan turned sharply. Elena stood in the doorway. Her hair was damp from the night air, and her shoulders were drawn tight with exhaustion. She looked like she had been debating whether to enter or flee. Her eyes drifted to the open box, the scattered belongings, and the letter in Ethan's shaking hands. "You found it," she whispered. Ethan stepped toward her, his voice rough. "Elena, why did you never tell me you were there that night? That you saved me?" Elena took a slow breath, her fingers brushing the sunflower pendant resting against her collarbone. "Because," she said softly, "saving you cost my family everything, and I knew that if you remembered me, it would put you in danger again." Her voice cracked slightly. "And you were just a child. You did not deserve to carry that memory." "Oh." Ethan looked at her, truly looked at her, and for the first time he saw not a contract bride, not a stranger, not a burden. He saw a survivor. He saw the girl his mother had trusted. He saw the woman who had been running from his family's secrets for 20 years. "Elena," Ethan said quietly, "you were not the only one who lost something that night." Her eyes filled with tears, and she took one shaky step toward him. "I know," she whispered. "That is why I tried to stay away. But it was too late for distance. The truth was already pulling them together in ways neither could control." And this time, Ethan was not letting her run. For most of his life, Ethan Hale had believed that the worst thing about the night of the fire was losing his mother. But now, standing only a few feet from Elena Brooks, he realized there had been another tragedy hidden beneath the ashes. A child had saved him. That child had grown into the woman standing in his mother's doorway, trembling in the same house she had once fled in fear. "Elena," Ethan said, his voice thick with emotion. "There is more I need to know." Elena looked at the wooden box on the bed, then back at him. She nodded slowly, as if preparing for something she had avoided for 2 decades. "There is something else," she whispered. "Something I hoped would never resurface." "Ew." Her words were heavy, but the silence that followed was heavier. Ethan led her downstairs to his late mother's private study. The room felt untouched by time, with shelves of old journals and boxes of burned or half-damaged evidence his mother had collected during her investigation. The air held a faint scent of cedar and smoke, the kind that settled into the walls after a fire and never fully left. On the desk sat an old metal safe. Ethan typed in the code his father had given him years ago, a code he had never understood until now. When the safe opened, a small hard drive wrapped in fire-damaged cloth lay inside. Ethan handed it to Elena. "Is this what your father brought?" he asked. Elena nodded, tears forming in her eyes. "It is the only surviving copy. We thought it was lost forever." Ethan connected the drive to a restored monitor in the corner. The screen flickered to life, revealing footage grainy from age and smoke damage. But even with the distortion, the scene was unmistakable, the Hale estate engulfed in flames. The video had been recorded from a camera placed near the side of the house. Ethan had never known such footage existed. The screen shook as the flames grew. Sparks flew like embers of a dying star. Smoke rolled across the yard in heavy waves. Suddenly, a small figure appeared, a girl no older than 10. She was coughing, stumbling, but determined. She pulled along a smaller figure, a boy. Ethan's heart clenched. It was him. He remembered the heat, the choking smoke, the moment when everything went black. But he had forgotten her, the one who dragged him out. On the video, the girl's sunflower pendant glimmered briefly in the firelight. Elena brought a hand to her mouth, staring at her younger self with disbelief. The moment stretched painfully as young Elena collapsed beside young Ethan in the yard. A shadow moved toward them, but the video cut off abruptly, damaged by fire. Ethan turned to her. "Why did you never tell me? Why did no one find you after the fire?" Elena lowered her gaze. "Because someone did find us. Someone from your family, but not the one you think. That night, when my father handed your mother the evidence, Richard was already following us. He wanted the documents destroyed. He wanted us quiet. When the fire started, my father pushed me out of the house, but he never came after me." Her voice broke. "I ran. I hid in the trees behind your house, and when I saw you collapse, I went back for you. I did not think about danger. I only thought about getting you away from the fire." Ethan felt a deep ache tighten in his chest. "What happened after?" he asked gently. "My mother took me away before Richard found us. We left everything behind. Our home, our names, our lives. My father died the next day from smoke inhalation. My mother hid me for years, moving from one city to another. I grew up learning how to disappear." She held the sunflower pendant. "This is the only thing I kept. A reminder that even in darkness, there was a moment of light." Ethan looked back at the frozen video frame, his younger self lying unconscious. The small figure of Elena shaking, her hands gripping his arm with all the strength she had. And behind them, the burning home that changed both of their lives forever. Ethan turned off the screen and stepped closer to her. "Elena, you should not have had to carry this alone." She shook her head slowly. "If your uncle discovers that you know this, he will destroy you the way he destroyed my family. That is why I stayed quiet. That is why I stayed out of your life. Because getting close to you meant putting you in danger again." End of 10. Ethan reached out, gently lifting her chin so she would meet his eyes. "Elena," he said softly, "you saved my life once. I will not let anyone take yours now." For the first time since they married, she let herself look at him without walls. And in that fragile moment, something inside Ethan shifted, a sense of destiny, of truth, of a bond forged in a night of fire and reborn in the ashes of their shared past. Outside, the wind rustled through the garden, brushing against a single blooming sunflower that had survived the storm. Inside, the truth was beginning to bloom too. The following morning, Manhattan woke beneath a sky heavy with dark clouds, as if the city itself sensed that a buried truth had begun to rise. Ethan Hale arrived at Hale International headquarters earlier than usual, carrying with him the memory of the video he had watched the night before. Every frame of it, every shadow, every flicker of young Elena Brooks dragging him from the fire replayed in his mind. He could not fathom how she had lived with that memory for 20 years. He could not fathom why he had forgotten her. And he could not fathom how his uncle had slept peacefully knowing what he had done. When Ethan stepped out of the private elevator onto the executive floor, he was met by a tense hush. Employees who usually greeted him with confidence now kept their eyes lowered. His assistant rushed toward him, pale and unsettled. "Sir, there is an emergency meeting that has already started. Your uncle requested it." Ethan's jaw tightened. "What now?" He did not say, but he told the board it was about your wife. A cold heaviness settled in Ethan's stomach. He walked into the boardroom, and every conversation stopped. At the far end of the long polished table sat Richard Hale, perfectly composed, fingers steepled, eyes gleaming with calculated triumph. Beside the screen stood Elena. She looked calm on the surface, but Ethan could see the tension in her shoulders, the stiffness in her breath, the way her fingers touched the sunflower pendant at her collarbone. It was her silent shield. Richard rose to his feet. "Gentlemen, ladies, we have a problem, a very serious one." He clicked a button on the remote, and the screen behind him lit up with images of the restricted vault, the audit documents, and fingerprint scans. Fingerprints belonging to Elena Brooks. Richard said, "Your so-called wife accessed files that were tied to the investigation surrounding your mother's death. Files that cost this company millions of dollars in legal battles. Files she had no authorization to even know existed." Ethan stepped forward, cutting through the tension. "What are you accusing her of?" Richard smiled coldly. "Espionage, corporate theft, a deliberate attempt to compromise Hale International Holdings." Gasps filled the room. Ethan turned to Elena, searching her face for panic, but she stood still, eerily still, as if she had already accepted the role she was being forced into. "Elena," Ethan said gently, tell them the truth." Her lips parted, but only silence came out. Richard folded his arms. "Go on, Mrs. Hale. Tell us why your fingerprints were on confidential documents. Tell us where you were the night security flagged unauthorized access. Or perhaps you cannot." He leaned closer, the cruelty unmistakable. "After all, your family has experienced disappearing after a crime." Ethan slammed his hand on the table. "Enough. You do not get to rewrite history." Richard turned to the board. "History is exactly what is being repeated. A Brooks involved in another Hale scandal, and Ethan chooses to overlook it, blinded by whatever fantasy he has about this woman." Elena's fingers tightened around the sunflower pendant until her knuckles turned white. Richard pointed directly at her. "I move for her immediate investigation and suspension from any legal dealings with this company. We cannot risk another Hale tragedy because of her." A murmur erupted around the room. Ethan looked at Elena, urging her silently to speak, to deny the accusation, to defend herself, to fight back. But Elena finally lifted her eyes, and what Ethan saw there nearly shattered him. "Resignation?" She spoke softly, but her voice carried through the room like a quiet confession. "I cannot prove I did not take those documents." The board erupted. Richard smirked. Ethan's heart dropped. "Elena, do not do this," Ethan whispered. She shook her head gently. "If I push back, Richard will dig deeper. And the truth about that night, the truth my father died protecting, will destroy your legacy, Ethan." Richard stepped closer, smelling victory. "So you admit guilt?" Elena looked at Ethan one last time, her eyes filled with a mixture of sorrow, fear, and a love she refused to claim. "I admit nothing," she said softly, "but I will not fight." Her words hit Ethan harder than any betrayal could, because this was not guilt, it was sacrifice. A sacrifice he could not accept. Before Richard could twist her words further, Ethan grabbed Elena's hand. "This meeting is over," he said coldly. "And if anyone here believes a word my uncle says, then you know nothing about loyalty or integrity." He led her out of the room, ignoring the whispers behind them. But as the elevator doors closed, Ethan saw a single tear fall down Elena's cheek, and he realized something terrifying. She was not afraid for herself. She was afraid for him. The elevator descended in heavy silence, carrying Ethan Hale and Elena Brooks away from the boardroom where her name had just been dragged through fire for a second time in her life. Elena stood stiffly beside him, her hands clasped in front of her, the sunflower pendant trembling against her collarbone with every shaky breath she took. When the doors opened into the private garage, Ethan gently touched her shoulder. "Elena, look at me." She did not move. "Elena," he repeated softly, "please." Slowly, she lifted her eyes. The sorrow in them felt deeper than anything Ethan had ever seen. Not fear, not guilt, something darker. Something like a quiet acceptance that she did not deserve. He stepped closer. "Why did you let him corner you like that? Why would you let yourself take the fall?" She inhaled shakily, her voice barely above a whisper. "Because fighting Richard means exposing the evidence your mother died for, and exposing it will bring everything crashing down on you. I will not be the one who destroys what she protected." Ethan's jaw clenched. You did nothing wrong. My mother trusted you. She asked me to protect you. Elena shook her head, stepping back as if the weight of his kindness hurt her. She asked you to protect a child, Ethan. I am not that child anymore. A flash of pain crossed her face, and she looked away. He wanted to argue, but she kept talking, her words pouring out like a truth she had held inside for too long. Every time I tried to build a life, my past found me. Every time I tried to be honest, someone got hurt. My mother spent years moving us from one city to another because your uncle never stopped searching. I learned to disappear, Ethan. I learned that survival means staying silent. She touched the pendant with trembling fingers. This is the only piece of my old life I have left. The only proof that I was ever more than a shadow. Ethan reached for her hands, but she pulled them back. Do you not see? Elena whispered. If I stay here, Richard will destroy you. He will use every mistake I make, every breath I take, to tear you down. He stepped closer. Let him try. Elena, his voice shook. I cannot lose you. A crack formed in her composure. One tear escaped down her cheek, then another. She turned away and said almost to herself, You already did. Before Ethan could react, she stepped toward the exit, the sound of her heels echoing in the cold garage. She moved quickly, as if the ground beneath her feet was collapsing. Elena, stop, Ethan called. She hesitated for a heartbeat, just one, but did not turn. Her voice drifted back to him, soft and breaking. You asked why I did not defend myself. The truth is, I would rather let them believe I am guilty than watch you lose the company your mother fought so hard to protect. She pushed the door open and stepped out into the night. Ethan followed her out onto the sidewalk, where a cold wind cut through the air. Rain clouds gathered low, pressing the city beneath a blanket of gray heaviness. Elena began walking toward the main road, her pace steady but fragile, like someone carrying more weight than her body could hold. Elena, Ethan called again, this time running after her. She stopped beneath a flickering streetlight, the glow outlining her like a fading silhouette. Her eyes met his, full of a devastation that tore through him. You are the only person left that Richard has not ruined, she said. If I stay, he will finish what he started 20 years ago. Ethan took her shoulders gently. I am not that helpless boy from the fire anymore, and you do not get to face this alone. For a moment, she leaned into his touch, almost as if she wanted to believe him, almost as if she wished the world were kinder. But then she pulled away. You cannot protect me from a man who killed for silence, she whispered. And you cannot protect yourself if I am standing beside you. A soft rumble of thunder rolled across the distance. She took one last breath, her eyes shining with a love she would never speak. Goodbye, Ethan. She turned and walked into the rain just as the storm finally broke, each drop falling like a reminder of everything they had lost and everything they still did not know. Ethan stood there, soaked beneath the clouded sky, watching the woman who had saved his life 20 years ago disappear once again. Only this time he was not a child, and he would not let history repeat itself. Rain poured down in relentless sheets as Ethan Hale stepped back into the Hale International limousine, the city lights melting into streaks through the wet windows. The driver waited for instructions, but Ethan could not speak. His mind replayed Elena's final words beneath that flickering streetlight. Goodbye, Ethan. He had watched her disappear into the storm, a lone sunflower trying to stay upright in a violent wind. He wanted to chase her. He wanted to drag her back into safety. But she had walked away with a conviction that broke him more than any betrayal ever could. Because she was not leaving for herself. She was leaving for him. The car engine hummed softly. Sir? The driver finally asked. Take me to the Hale estate, Ethan said. The estate sat 30 miles outside the city, surrounded by old oak trees and memories Ethan had tried to bury. Tonight, it felt like the only place where he might find the missing piece of a truth that had been kept from him for 20 years. Inside, he found his father sitting in the dimly lit study, staring at an empty fireplace. The room smelled of cedar and old pages. Alexander Hale looked up slowly when his son entered, and the fear in his eyes told Ethan one thing. His father already knew Elena was gone. Ethan spoke first, his voice rough from the cold rain. She walked away because she thinks staying will destroy me. She said Richard will come after us both. Alexander's shoulders sagged. She is right. Ethan froze. What do you mean, she is right? Alexander motioned for him to sit. Ethan remained standing. His father sighed heavily, like a man about to lift the lid off a truth too heavy for a lifetime. Richard has been trying to bury the investigation your mother started. The financial crimes she uncovered were only a small part of it. She discovered something far darker, something that would have sent Richard to federal prison. He paused, struggling to breathe deeply. She trusted only one person outside this family to help her, Elena's father. Ethan felt the world tilt, but he stayed silent. Alexander continued. Your mother believed she would have enough time to gather evidence. She was wrong. The night of the fire, Richard did not expect Elena and her father to be here. He panicked. The blaze grew beyond his control. He wanted to destroy the documents, not kill anyone. But fires do not obey intentions. A sharp pain cut through Ethan's chest. And my mother? Ethan asked quietly. Alexander closed his eyes. Your mother tried to get you out first, but the smoke overtook her before she could escape. Elena's father got you out of the house and collapsed shortly after. He saved you, Ethan. Not Richard, not me. Elena's father. Ethan braced a hand on the desk to steady himself. His father looked at him with anguish. When Richard realized Elena had survived, he tried to erase every trace of her family. Your mother's evidence, their identities, everything. I was powerless because Richard held the leverage of several board members, and they believed him. I chose to stay silent to keep you alive. Ethan whispered, You let a child run for her life. Alexander bowed his head. I lived with that shame every day. The room grew painfully quiet. Then Ethan asked the question that mattered most. Why now? Why attack Elena again? Why frame her? Alexander clasped his hands together, fingers trembling. Because Richard discovered that the drive your mother hid survived the fire. He thinks Elena has it. And he knows that if the truth is exposed, his entire empire will collapse. He would rather destroy her and you than let that happen. Ethan felt a cold, focused fury settle into his bones. He already destroyed her life once. He will not do it again. Alexander reached for Ethan's arm. Ethan, listen to me. Richard will stop at nothing. If Elena comes back, she will be in danger. You will be in danger. The company will be torn apart. Ethan did not answer, because he knew something his father did not. Elena was already in danger, and this time she had walked into the storm without anyone to shield her. He stepped back from his father, his voice low and unwavering. I will not lose her again. Not to Richard. Not to fear. Not to 20 years of silence. Alexander's eyes filled with helpless worry. Ethan, what are you going to do? Ethan turned toward the door, the determination in his expression sharper than steel. I am going to find the truth, he said, and I am going to bring her home. Outside, the rain finally began to ease. But inside Ethan's heart, a new storm was just beginning to rise. Ethan Hale drove through the fading storm with a determination that felt like fire in his veins. The night had finally broken, leaving behind soft streaks of dawn that touched the horizon with pale gold. The city was quiet, as if holding its breath for what was about to come. Ethan knew exactly where he needed to go. Elena Brooks had only one place in the entire world where she felt safe. Her small townhouse on the outskirts of Manhattan, tucked behind a weathered iron gate and surrounded by a modest garden she tended every morning before work. It was the one place she had allowed herself to plant roots, even if those roots were fragile. And in the corner of that garden stood the thing she cherished most, a row of sunflowers she had grown from seeds, saved after the fire that destroyed her childhood. When Ethan arrived, the ground was still wet from the storm. The sunflowers, battered by the night's wind, stood tall in the soft morning breeze. Their yellow petals were a little torn, but they were reaching toward the rising sun with quiet resilience. Just like her. Ethan stepped through the gate and saw Elena sitting on the small wooden bench near the flowers. Her hair was damp, her clothes still wrinkled from the night's rain, and her fingers gently traced the petals of a sunflower that had almost lost its bloom. She heard his footsteps but did not turn. Elena, Ethan said softly. Her hand froze mid-air. She did not look at him. You should not be here, she whispered. Ethan walked closer. You walked away to protect me, but I am not letting you carry this alone. Not anymore. Her shoulders trembled, and she finally turned to face him. Her eyes were swollen, not from weakness, but from the weight of a past that had hunted her for 2 decades. You do not understand, she said. If Richard discovers that you know the truth, he will destroy you. Your mother died trying to stop him. My father died trying to protect her evidence. If you continue this, Her voice cracked. You will be next. Ethan knelt in front of her, taking her shaking hands into his. Elena, listen to me. My uncle has been hurting this family for 20 years. He took my mother. He took your father. He took your childhood. I will not let him take you too. Tears welled in her eyes, but she shook her head. Ethan, you are the last person he wants to lose. If your company falls, everything your mother built falls with it. Ethan squeezed her hands gently. There is something you do not know. My mother left more than the letter. She left proof of everything Richard did. Evidence that survived the fire. Evidence he never found. Elena stared at him, stunned. You have it? Yes, Ethan said. And I am going to use it. Fear flashed across her face. You cannot go against him alone. He will ruin you in ways you cannot imagine. Ethan brushed a strand of hair from her cheek. I am not alone. Not anymore. You and I have been tied to the same tragedy since the night of the fire. We survived it together, and we will end it together. For a moment, Elena looked at him as if seeing him for the first time, not as the millionaire who had hired her, not as the man she married on paper, but as the boy she had once saved, and the man who had now chosen to save her. Her voice trembled. Ethan, why are you doing this? He lifted her chin gently, his eyes steady and full of truth. Because you are the light I did not know I lost, and because you deserve protection long before I was capable of giving it. A soft sob escaped her, and she pressed her forehead to his. For the first time, she allowed herself to break not in fear, but in relief. Later that day, Ethan confronted the board with the evidence his mother had gathered before her death. Every document, every recording, every hidden file. His uncle Richard was exposed before 12 members of Hale International's highest authority. A lifetime of deceit unraveled in an hour. Richard Hale was removed from his position immediately and escorted from the building as employees watched in stunned silence. Ethan did not stay to see the rest. He had something more important to return to. As the sun began to set, he walked back into Elena's garden. She stood among the sunflowers, the golden light reflecting on her tear-stained cheeks. The flowers swayed gently around her as if welcoming him home. Ethan approached her slowly, then took her hands. Elena, he said in a quiet, unwavering voice, I no longer have a contract. I have a choice, and my choice is you. Her lips trembled. Ethan, he continued, if love is a second chance, then I want mine with you, right here, right now. All, in the warm glow of sunset, surrounded by the flowers she had grown from the ashes of her past, Elena stepped into his arms, and for the first time in 20 years, both of them felt the weight of their tragedies lift. Not because the past was gone, but because they had finally found a future worth holding on to.